Welcome everybody, and good evening or good morning if you're joining from a different time zone. This is the BCS, the Chartered Institute for IT's first event in a series of 2 events dedicated to diversity. Tonight's event is dedicated to neurodiversity. Our next event on Monday 17th of August will address different angles of the diversity and inclusion aspects, which focus on gender, race and ethnic background. Let me welcome, first of all, our speaker, Dr. Emma Philpott, my fellow BCS Law Committee member, David Clark, who will chair this event tonight, and Rebecca George, who is the BCS President. Rebecca, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good evening or good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar, which is on a subject very close to my heart and very important in our profession, neurodiversity. I am the President of the BCS, the Chartered Institute for IT, for this year, and I am honoured to be so. My platform for the year is to encourage professionalism and membership. And so I talk a lot about the importance of being properly qualified and accredited to do the jobs you're doing in our industry, and encourage you to bring in new people or bring in new members to our institute. If there's anybody on the webinar who isn't a member of the BCS, please get in touch. We would love to welcome you. My day job is I'm managing partner for government and public services at Deloitte. I run a business that spans 25 countries. I've been a partner at Deloitte for 15 years, and prior to that, I was at IBM for 20 years. I've been interested in diversity and inclusion for a really, really long time, probably around 30 years now, and initially spent an awful lot of time trying to get more women into IT. I like to think maybe we wouldn't have done even as well as we have done, which isn't that well, if we hadn't worked at it, but we have a great distance still to travel. However, more recently, I've got very, very interested in other areas of diversity and inclusion, and I do have a particular interest in neurodiversity. I recently published an article which has been published in our Tester magazine, and is available through my profile on LinkedIn if you're not a member of the BCS. I think that people with neurodiverse capability are incredibly well suited to careers in IT, but society doesn't always recognise that. And my personal view is that neurodiverse capability should be recognised, celebrated and supported from very early stages in education, right through education and then into careers. And we all need a lot more education in how to do that. I've just recently launched a President's Challenge in the Institute on diversity, and I'm seeking your views of all the branches and specialist groups on the causes and solutions for diversity and inclusion, principally for the UK government, but I'm interested in views from other countries as well. So do look out for that and please participate. So that's all I have to say. I'm going to let you hear from our main speaker this evening, and I'm going to hand you over to David, who is going to introduce her. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Rebecca. Yeah, today it's something I've been looking forward for ages. Yeah, we've got Dr. Emma Philpott, and if you don't know Dr. Emma Philpott, she is CEO of the IASME Consortium, and you would almost certainly have heard of Cyber Essentials. Cyber Essentials work closely with the NCSC, providing kind of security standardization for sort of businesses, especially in the UK. And today, one of Emma's other initiatives is talking about and demonstrating capability for neurodiverse training. So this is going to be a really exciting talk, and I've been really looking forward to it. After the talk, if you want to ask questions, you can raise your hand, that's electronically, or send questions via chat. So thank you, and Dr. Emma, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. Just work the technology. Yes, so I came into understanding about neurodiverse people because my bright, outgoing, clever daughter, she was 14, had a sudden complete breakdown, and it turns out that she is autistic, and she had learned ways to meet social expectations, and she was having to learn by rote exactly what you do in every social situation rather than having it come naturally. And of course, when she came to the teenage years, it just became too complex. You can't learn by rota exactly what to do in every situation when you're a teenager. And so she had a breakdown. Until that point, of course, we had no idea. But working with her to get her through the breakdown, meeting the people that she then mixed with that were autistic, I realized that not only are many ASPEs or autistic people incredibly talented and very, very clever, but most of them are not in work. So as the slide here says, only 16% of autistic adults are in work, and that hasn't changed recently. And it's not just that they are not in work. If they do find a job and start work, as many of them actually do, they often leave within 6 months. Because of the extreme stress of commercial workplaces for them. So, of course, many people in cybersecurity teams have autistic traits, and we all recognize that. I'm sure many of us have autistic traits, but some neurodiverse people do need a lot of extra support in the workplace. So what we're talking about in the work that we do, the people that can't just cope in the workplace, they're not able to happily work in the current workplaces without support. And often the support is just not available. In fact, there's very little support for neurodiverse people. Once you get past the age of about 21, 22, then there's very little out there at all in terms of support or understanding. So cybersecurity is a very, very exciting topic when you bring it together with neurodiversity, because there is a well-publicized gap in cybersecurity skills, not just in the UK, but across the world. There is a lot of debate about whether that gap is real, whether it is a skills gap, whether it's just employers don't know what to ask for, whether people are being trained in the wrong thing. But regardless, there is obviously some issue that there are not enough people for the jobs. So there is apparently a growing cybersecurity skills shortage. And of course, this will only get worse because cybersecurity issues are not going to go away. Very interestingly, neurodiverse people are often better at cybersecurity than the rest of us, which are called neurotypicals. And this is the key, because we are not talking about a charity here. We're not talking about giving neurodiverse people a job to be nice or to help them. We're talking about giving neurodiverse people a job in cybersecurity because they are better at it. And that's the key. So obviously, it depends what neurodiversity people have, and everyone is completely different. But often, particularly autistic people have amazing attention to detail. They can spot patterns. They have very good focus on tasks. Focus is a very big key, actually. With a lot of our neurodiverse people, they are so focused. We have to encourage them to take many breaks, because they will actually burn out. They will completely focus until a task is done. And if that takes many hours, that's how long they will focus. And also, of course, they have logical, science-based thinking. And interestingly, they often don't have to get distracted by emotional baggage. They will make a decision completely on the logical process. So, you know, if it's something that the rest of us don't like to think about, they will come to that conclusion. And of course, at a later stage, they might say, well, you know, we might not want to do this because of X, Y, and Z. But they don't have those, many of them don't have the social barriers that says you can't even think of that, because, you know, they can. So that's a very, very interesting side. Maybe because of that, probably not because of that. Very interestingly, GCHQ has positively recruited for autistic people for many, many years. And as you see on the quote on the slide, Robert Hannigan saying that they want people who dare to think differently and be different. I've seen another quote from a senior at GCHQ person who said they couldn't do what they do without their autistic staff. I think probably they would include all neurodiverse staff in that now. And of course, one of the most famous neurodiverse people, absolutely key to the work we did in the Second World War, is Alan Turing. So he is a prime example of neurodiversity and the incredible talents you get. Another part of what we think about in this project is preventing cybercrime. There is a very strong link between neurodiversity and cybercrime. And indeed, whenever I hear on the news that some young hacker's been caught, it's great that bad hackers are caught, but there's always part of me that thinks, is that an autistic person that has been led astray, has misunderstood something? And I think this is a growing problem that the police recognize. So you get a group of people who have particular talent for computer manipulation. They often find it very difficult socially, and so they tend to self-isolate, and they are lonely. They want to be part of something. They feel bad about themselves. They want to be recognized for their skills. And also, they believe what they're told. Almost always, autistic people and people with other neurodiversities will believe what they are told. They are quite trusting of people, including strangers. And of course, they don't understand the social line of expectation, of the social responsibility they don't see. If it isn't in a rule, then they won't see it as a line. So because of all this, of course, they are prime targets for cyber criminals. So there's a growing evidence that cyber criminals are finding lonely, talented, autistic people online, encouraging them to be part of the gang and getting them to do cybercrime for them. And of course, it makes them feel part of the gang, it makes them feel recognized, but then they are caught and it is them that suffers and goes to prison and not the actual criminals. So this is a growing problem, and we are working with the police with our work to try and address this and to try and find these talented people before they get to that stage. So what have we been doing? Well, for the last several years, we have been offering free cybersecurity training for unemployed neurodiverse adults. So it's great that there is more and more understanding of this at the young adult stage, the teens and even the children, which is brilliant. We focus on the adults, usually those that have left school or dropped out of school, probably 17, 18-year-old plus, because that's the stage where there is very little other things that they can do. Often, they have nothing else, nowhere else to turn. We started running the courses in Worcester, in the Guildhall, unbelievably. We chose the Guildhall because they gave us a very, very, very cheap room. And we initially didn't have any funding for this. So we started in June 2018. And we ran 2 days a week, and then we moved to 1 day a week, mainly because of funding issues, to be honest. We had amazing support from the West Midlands Regional Cybercrime Unit, and that was actually quite essential, because they would refer some people to us that they were worried were on the path to becoming, to breaking the law online, young people that they would meet at big gaming conferences, for example. But also some of the people that were referred to us, you could see would have been relatively easy to persuade to move to cybercrime. And so Wendy Barker from the Roku used to just come along and just sit in on a lot of the training sessions, build up a friendship, building up a rapport with the students. And they started asking her things like, I've had this idea, Wendy, and I thought I might just try doing this. And she would go a little bit pale and say, oh, no, I don't think that would be a very good idea. And then explain to them why and go over again about how it's to do with permission. And she brought some of the really technical cybercrime police guys over to talk to them as well. So that was essential, actually, to our work. Other parts of the work, we have free access to Immersive Labs. And for anyone who doesn't know Immersive Labs, I expect you all do. It's an amazing online environment where you can do lots of different labs and train up on it. And of course, the best thing about this for us is that if people were too nervous to leave their room, maybe didn't want to leave the house at all, they could just go online and they could start the training with Immersive Labs. So that was absolutely brilliant. We also had loads of top cybersecurity professionals that would come to Worcester, here at the centre of the world, and give, a training session on anything. Sometimes it would just be talking about their career. Other times it would be actually training in, vulnerability scanning, or I don't know, lots of different things. And it was brilliant. Someone described it as training that money couldn't buy, and that certainly is the case. We're massively indebted to the senior people that gave up their time to do that. So that was fantastic. We accepted trainees. I mean, they tended to be between the ages of 19 and 50. A couple of the slightly older ones had only just been diagnosed. Very interestingly, both were men actually. They'd only just been diagnosed, and one of them, who may be watching this now, said that it was like being born an Apple computer and always having the handbook to a Windows PC, and not really understanding why the commands didn't work on him. And then when he was diagnosed, being given the manual for an Apple computer and being like, oh, wow, this is me. So that was very, very interesting. We got new trainees about every 2 weeks from, as you can see, some from the police, some from local charities. DWP was starting to refer people to us. It took quite a long time to get in with DWP because there's different job centres and it was quite complicated. But we did, and we started getting long-term neurodiverse unemployed people referred from them, and also NHS. So sometimes people who had been very ill were referred to us through the NHS. Of course, the experience massively varies. Some had done degrees in IT and just wanted to get back into it. Others were home educated. Usually the ones the police sent us were quite home educated. And some just had a tendency, a love of technology and IT, and came along without very much experience at all. But all of them were unemployed and neurodiverse. So we trained up 44 people. 26 of them found employment and 19 of them in cybersecurity. In fact, those that weren't in cybersecurity, they got jobs in things like, they moved into coding mainly. And I think all except 2 are still in those jobs. And that's a key, because as I said before, a lot of them are not able to stay in the jobs once they get there. So it was absolutely brilliant. Unfortunately, our funding stopped after that, but also, of course, the pandemic happened. It's very easy to describe this process and this training without really understanding the enormous effect it has on people's lives. Somebody described their life before as they felt that they'd been just left on the scrap heap of life. And they said that when we told them about this course, they were being given another chance. And that's, this was a young man of 24 said that. The fact that somebody feels that their life is over and they have no more chances should never be, especially in a first world country. People of all ages and experiences, as you can see some of the quotes here, just meeting other neurodiverse people also and being told about the things that people value about them had a big impact. In fact, some of the trainees got a job soon after starting the course, and it wasn't so much the fact that we taught them something, it was the fact that they realized that their skills actually were valued and that it gave them more confidence and so they applied, so they got them. A couple more quotes here. It's rebuilt my confidence. I can see a bright future for myself. Gained a lot of knowledge. Interestingly, with most of them, it's not a case of teaching them IT or cybersecurity. I mean, obviously, you can teach them some frameworks of them, but they automatically are very, very capable at all that kind of IT stuff. What they do really struggle with is the social aspects, a very wide variety of social aspects. And of course, they have depression often and very low self-esteem. So that was all great, fantastic. We trained up 44 people, but we thought that would be it. You know, we trained them up, they would get jobs, and that was it. But there actually were no jobs. Well, there were not enough jobs for the people we trained up. We didn't have enough funding to do much more. And it was only in Worcester. I mean, basically, we only provided this in people who could get to Worcester. There was one person that drove down from Manchester twice a week to attend it. And, you know, 3 hours in the car, I was really worried about him doing that. And I said, shouldn't drive all that way twice a week. It's going to, you know, make you ill. And he said, there is nothing else for me. The training in Worcester is the only opportunity I have. He is now a full-time employee of NCC Group. So it's absolutely brilliant. But the fact that someone has to drive 3 hours to go to our little unfunded course should be ringing alarm bells in the country. That he's a very talented person. There should be lots of options for him. Anyway, so there's a big gap. We train them up. It's not that easy. They have incredibly low self-esteem, high anxiety, and really bad past experiences, which can lead to PTSD. They need understanding and support. And for, you know, working in a company, particularly a larger organization, it's very difficult to put in lots of support and lots of changes for one individual. It becomes not really worth employing that person, because, you know, why would we change everything and put in all that support for one person? Also, it's important that the employees are treated as individuals. You can't have a neurodiverse policy which says, okay, everyone is going to have dimmable lights, and nobody will need to be talked to directly. Or you can have policies that some individuals might find helpful, but you have to treat them as individuals. Many of them have very, very specific anxieties or issues that you have to understand, discuss, and be open-minded when you're thinking about whether it's possible or not. Having said that, there are many hundreds of extremely talented people out there without jobs that fall into this category. And so we have to find ways of employing them. It makes sense in every single sense of the word. At the moment, they are depressed and lonely, feeling bad about themselves, and on unemployment benefit, whereas they could be adding to all of our security and being proud of themselves, a really good salary. So something needs to change. So then IASME invested 360,000 in starting a community SOC project. So this was a 2-year project where we hired the first cohort of the training scheme that we ran. So we hired 14 long-term unemployed neurodiverse people from the training course, and we tried to develop a new business, which was protection for vulnerable individuals, really. So it gets very confusing because we're talking about neurodiverse people being employed to protect vulnerable individuals. And people always get very confused when I try and describe it. But it is basically a very, very low cost monitoring solution, which we were hoping that the SOC individuals would be able to run. And so I'll just go back to that. So that was successful to an extent. Being an employer of a lot of neurodiverse people was way, way, way harder than I expected. So we had to learn a lot, and things took longer than I thought. But you know, we've learned so much, and we've made a lot of progress. And we have now a business, a community SOC business, which employs neurodiverse people. But we realized that wasn't going to be enough. So IASME can't employ all neurodiverse people in that job. So we started an idea where, instead of asking neurodiverse people that have a support network to leave the support network, travel to live in a different part of the country and join a large corporate environment, didn't want to suggest that, and we didn't want to suggest to the corporate environment that they try and support this one individual who comes into their organization that they don't understand. So that wasn't working. So we thought, so we started a pilot with E2E Assure. Now, they run a commercial SOC in Oxfordshire. Many of you will know them. They run lots of SOCs, actually. And they were finding a struggle to recruit SOC analysts. So they asked us if they could work with us. And what we did was they hired an office in our building. So although the rest of the company is in Oxfordshire, they hired an office in Malvern. And 4 of our long-term neurodiverse ex-trainees started working in that office in Malvern for them. So they were E2E Assure employees, and they were trained up as a remote SOC. So they were treated as any other SOC analyst, but most importantly, they could stay living in the region where their support network is, and also they were supported by us still. So IASME has a full-time welfare manager who's brilliant. She started off just supporting the neurodiverse people, and now she supports everyone in the company. So she also supports the employees in the E2E Assure SOC. And that has worked so well. We didn't know if it would work. We tried 4 people to start with, and 6 months later, we did a review with E2E, and they were so happy. They really, really were. So they have asked, well, they immediately wanted the number of employees to double. So the problem then was the pandemic. So that happened just as we started the lockdown with COVID-19. So they have still gone ahead in a longer time frame in recruiting more people, and they're putting things in place so that they can work remotely. So that is working amazingly well at the moment. What we would like is to do this with other companies. So we know that there are a lot of cybersecurity companies who are struggling to recruit SOC analysts and other roles within cybersecurity. We have got amazingly talented people that we can find for you, and they can work remotely while we still support them. So of course, the problem was still with our training that people had to get to Worcester. But of course, this has all been overtaken by the COVID effect. So unfortunately, all the training was stopped. Our SOC employees had to be furloughed because they couldn't travel into the office. And at the time, the support was face-to-face. Also, all the equipment that they used was in the office. So whereas a lot of our company has been working from home, the actual neurodiverse SOC employees have been furloughed over this time. Of course, we were all assuming it would go away and we would all go back to the office. That's not going to happen, not in the short term. And with a lot of our neurodiverse employees in particular, they are vulnerable. They often have other medical issues. They get very, very anxious. And of course, COVID has made them more anxious. So, so we're not going to get everyone back in the office in the foreseeable future, I think. So we have decided to work on delivering the remote training remotely, and also work out ways to enable remote working. So this includes things like making sure that they have the support, even if they're remote. we have been supporting our SOC furloughed employees every week through Teams and other online methods, and that has actually worked really, really well. So we are looking at extending that to the training and hopefully also remote working. We're even thinking about things like if a neurodiverse person is living with another carer, such as a parent or a partner of some description, to find a way of kind of a three-way contract. So it brings in the parent or the partner to be part of the support network, so that we can talk to them and they can talk to us, as well as the employee. This is still stuff that we're thinking through. But if we can crack this, if we can enable neurodiverse people to be trained up from home and work from home while still being supported, I mean, that's the holy grail, because it's very, very difficult for neurodiverse people to come into work training places. So, for example, we've had a whole range of issues. The usual ones, of course, is the lights are too bright or the lights are too dim. So we all have desk lamps now. The noise is too much, so we all have to have noise cancelling headphones. Those are the easy things. Some people, you know, they will suddenly say, do you mind if I work on the floor? Or, you know, well, there's many, many other things. And often for a busy CEO, the first response is, no, don't be silly. You know, no, that's not okay. No, we can't put a special colored film over the lights. That's not okay. But you have to stop and say, why isn't it okay? You know, is there an actual real reason why that's not okay? Or is it just your social understanding of what is done in work? And I think that's the difficulty, to get into a different mindset. And however busy you are, this isn't just some little thing that they're saying because, you know, they're being difficult. It almost causes physical pain for them, and it would stop them working for your company if you can't do something about it. So it's a big change in mindset for anyone running a company. But anyway, all the SOC employees will be unfurloughed by the end of August, and we hope within the 3 to 6 months we will start the unemployed neurodiverse training again. And yeah, so we will be looking for hopefully volunteers to do recorded training, and if anyone is able to do that, then all offers will be welcome. So just the last few thoughts, really. So as I've said before, it's very hard to get funding. It doesn't fall into any particular funding bucket, really. There's a little bit of money in the police, a little bit under DWP, a little bit under skills, but you know, it doesn't really match anything completely. We have amazing volunteers, and that's really how this has been continuing to go. It is harder than we thought. I've covered many of this already. Relationships and treating everybody as an individual is the most important thing. Anxiety and depression is a very, very large issue for many of the people that we work with. And there are safeguarding issues. When I first started running this, somebody from the county council had a meeting with me and said, remember, you're not their mum. You must only look at the training, and it's not your responsibility for the outside the training, their life. But that isn't as simple as it sounds. When our trainee became homeless, you know, he couldn't come in and do training because he was homeless, and he was obviously very upset, potentially having to sleep on the streets. We had to help him to do something. When another of our trainees was basically starving because he hadn't understood that he had to go to the DWP meetings, they had not realized or it hadn't been noted that he was neurodiverse, and so they just stopped all his benefits, and he had no money at all, so he couldn't buy food. Of course you have to step in some way when those kind of things happen, and that's something that we've had to learn. And when people really hit rock bottom with depression, you have to do something. You have to have ways to help them that doesn't necessarily involve the company. So that is a big difficulty. Lots of companies and apprenticeship providers talk the talk. And when we first started doing this, we thought there was, oh, so many people are understanding and take on neurodiverse people and offer training. When you actually find out about it, they only want easy neurodiverse people, as our welfare manager said. So people who can just fit in, but are neurodiverse, that's fine. People who need extra understanding and support, it's much, much harder to find anyone that is able to actually go beyond the talk. I have to say NCC Group and E2E obviously are notable exceptions, and KPMG. So I'm sure there are many others now, but not actually that many. So for the training, you need a support person that isn't about the training, it's about the person, that's about the social aspects. You need quiet rooms, train stations. Of course, once we're online, then none of this matters so much anymore. But you also need lots of patience and empathy. It is difficult for many of these people to tell you what's bothering them, because often they've been told off. You know, they've been told that they're stupid, they've been told to just fit in, and it takes quite a long time to get beyond that. So it is difficult, but amazingly rewarding. I was saying before that to see so 4 of the people now working for E2E were long-term unemployed before, and you would not recognize them now. They walk tall, they are very proud, and they have amazing careers ahead of them. So it's worth it, even for one person. And that was going to be the end of my talk. I'd be very happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you so much, Emma. Chiara, there's a few questions in the queue.
Yes, thank you very much, Emma. That was great, fantastic. Okay, I have a few questions. I am going to read them out, but if you tell me in the chat or by raising your hand that you're happy to be given the mic, I can unmute you at my end. You can unmute yourself at your end, and you can actually ask the question or interact with the speaker directly. But anyway, the first question comes from Jay Hughes, who says he's a psychologist and works with court reports, but his question is, I'm concerned that the messages not being given to neurodiverse people about both dangers and positive opportunities available is not going through. Would your group or others consider developing a program aimed at providing and explaining safe frameworks? Now, your group could be IASME, so that would be for Emma to answer, or it could be aimed at BCS, and that would be for Rebecca to answer. But let me follow this up. The same delegate is asking or specifying that he's a psychologist, does court reports, and it would be helpful for him to have programs to recommend for the future to protect these people. So, Emma, would you like to address this? How can we get in touch? Where do you advertise these initiatives?
So I think trying to explain, trying to explain the dangers and what to do and what not to do is a big issue. The thing with neurodiversity, I think, is there is so much to do, so much to do, and so little time and so little funding. But there is a lot of potential for better guidance, as well as schemes like ours. So yes, our scheme, we would like to be able to have it advertised and work with the police and take on people that they are worried about, which would educate them and help them understand what's okay to do and what isn't okay to do. Part of the problem actually is in our law. Our law is not black and white. in terms of many of our laws, you know, there's a judgment in there, and that's not really fair when you're talking about neurodiverse people, because our idea of what is right could be very different from someone else's idea of what is right. So it's difficult to explain exactly to a neurodiverse person about what's right and what's wrong when it's not that clear. It's a judgment. But yes, we hope to, particularly once we've started the online training, to advertise it much more widely. Excuse my dogs. And yes, make it much more available.
In the immediate term, would you be happy to share an address or a contact of some kind? Are you available through LinkedIn? How can people reach out?
Yeah, so the best thing to do is email me at emma.philpott@iasme.co.uk, or you can contact me via LinkedIn. I'm Emma Philpott. I don't know how more to describe myself on LinkedIn. I'm sure you'll find me. I'm the Emma Philpott that works at IASME. Yes, please do.
Okay, Rebecca.
Me. Carry on.
Okay. Rebecca, I don't know if we have anything.
So we don't, BCS probably wouldn't provide the training. We are not a training provider in that sense. We tend to license other people to train the things that we are able to do, and this is not our core area. However, I think there's a couple of things that the BCS should certainly consider, and one of them is to, because our charter is to make IT good for society, there are so many things about Emma's brilliant speech there that I think we ought to pick up as a profession, as a professional organisation, and also with our Royal Charter. So there's some stuff around socialising the issue, looking for help for Emma, and looking for any other training providers who are also working in this field. I think we have to work on all of that, and particularly I think so because our profession benefits more from people with neurodiverse capability than any other profession.
Fantastic. I have another question from Richard Cornell, and I'll read it out, but then again, if you want to put your hand up, Richard, and ask or follow up, please do so. So Richard writes, have IASME used cyber apprenticeship to employ and train neurodiverse people? This is a good route for people who don't cope well with more traditional forms of education and training, and it helps with the funding. He continues by saying the first barrier for neurodiverse people is actually the job advert, which often states that the organization is looking for team players, quote unquote, who will be office-based and take a full and active part in the social life of the organization. This is extraordinarily off-putting for some people who have the necessary skills and experience. Is this really necessary? So this is Richard. I don't know who wants to answer this. Emma?
Yes. So yes, job adverts are in general terrible. You know, they promote things that neurotypical people will love. Oh, you know, a great social life and, you know, team player. And of course, neurodiverse people would just hate that. We try, I think we try, we certainly, I think we try, include in our job adverts that neurodiverse people are welcome. And I think that's something that we can do. So yes, it is. We have tried apprenticeship route. It hasn't been successful, I have to say, because the apprenticeship providers, you know, we talk to them and we say, this is a neurodiverse candidate, and they say they completely understand, and yes, they know all about neurodiverse candidates, and then they go on to obviously not understand neurodiverse candidates. So we had one person in particular who they did the being British questions at the beginning, where you are told about how you have to have British values. And one of our neurodiverse trainees argued against it because he was, you know, he was being very black and white in his own head. Anyway, they sent him home immediately because of his responses, and he was really knocked back by that and very upset. Not all of them have been that bad, but there is unfortunately a general lack of understanding, awareness, support in apprenticeship organisations for neurodiverse people, we find. However, we have people who have not coped at all in school and have not coped at all in university. And the apprenticeship route is much easier for them because, you know, most of the time they're in work and being supported and doing exciting things, and they only occasionally have to go into the classroom. So there's no perfect solution, and hopefully things will improve.
And I'll just add to that you know, one of the other roles that I have is I'm chair of the T-level reform program board. So I work with the Department of Education on the introduction of the new 16 to 19-year-old qualifications being rolled out from this September, T-levels, and one of them coming this September in digital. But actually we work in a broader context, and there's a big FE white paper coming out in September, and there's also currently a review of higher technical education. So I am going to talk about this issue with the people that I work with at the Department of Education. And I'm going to stop there because I'm conscious there's a lot of noise in the background, so apologies for that.
Emma, there's a couple of questions I have, which probably partly overlaps with what's been already asked. But in many ways, my question to you is, shouldn't we be training the neurotypical to understand the neurodiverse as much as we're putting money into training the neurodiverse? It looks like there's such a lack of understanding and so many assumptions about being awkward or not fitting in that are exactly that, our lack of understanding of a range of how people behave in social context. So that's one question. And the other is, if somebody's really keen, if an employer were really keen to find this talent pool, other than, you know, reaching out to you, where should they go? What kind of niche, what kind of, you mentioned gaming communities. Any other tips?
Yes. So I'll answer the second one first. We were very lucky actually in Worcester because we have a charity called ASPE, which my daughter found actually, and it's a house where twice a week adults with Asperger's just go and hang out. And it's an amazing place. It's a very strange place for a neurotypical, I can tell you. There's usually, you go in and there's about 50 adults hanging out, you know, playing pool, computer games, just chatting. But it's normal to be Aspie there. So, you know, I go in and I talk to people and they're just looking at their shoes. It's a bizarre place. But a lot of them were really, really keen to be part of our program. So that was easy for us to find. It takes much longer to find people who are not in an organization like that because, you know, by their very nature, they have often given up and they're just self-isolating at home. Certainly the job centre is, you know, they are meant to know if they're neurodiverse. If they have neurodiverse people who are skilled in certain areas, they are meant to know. But particularly with the move to universal credit, they don't always know. But, you know, it's a good place to start. That's where we found them. Sorry, could you remind me of the first question again?
No, that you've answered everything. Should we train the neurotypical more than the neurodiverse?
So that is a very good point. Ideally, yes, but it is so difficult for us to understand. Us, as in, I'm assuming I'm a neurotypical, or, you know, who knows? It is so difficult. Everything that we think is fixed and certain in our mind, because of how we've grown up and the things that we are certain about, in a neurodiverse person's mind, in an Asperger's person's mind, that they are not certain. They don't even know them. If you don't tell them something, they don't know it automatically, like a lot of the things that we do. So that it's very difficult to put yourself in the mind of an autistic person because you have to keep going deeper, if you see what I mean. So, for example, my daughter said it's always very difficult when she is out walking the dogs, because she meets different kinds of people and she has to remember what kind of greeting to give them. So she's sort of made rules in her own mind that if they're a neighbor, you say a certain thing like, hello, how are you? If she's never met them before, she might just nod. And if they're a good friend, she'll greet them in a different way. And she had all these different categories that she had to learn. Whereas for neurotypicals, we automatically know how to greet different people in different categories. My daughter once said to me that it's like walking around the place and there are invisible walls made of glass, and you just, as an ASPE, you suddenly bang into a wall without even knowing it's there. And the only way you can prevent yourself banging into that wall again is to learn a special dance that has steps to avoid the walls. But of course, the longer you live, the more walls you find, the more complicated the dance gets. And I think trying to understand what it must be like is very, very difficult. So I've been working with, well, I mean, I've spent a lot of time talking to my daughter. I've been working with neurodiverse people for 4 years now, and I'm still learning. So yes, there's a massive amount of work to help people understand, but every neurodiverse person is in a different environment, and yes, it's very complicated, quite difficult, I think.
Thank you for that. I suppose by lumping everybody into the label, we're doing a disservice to our colleagues, and it would have the training about neurodiversity itself to neurotypical would have to be individualized. But there's another question from John.
Sorry, carry on.
No,
go ahead.
You go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that neurodiversities in themselves are so different. So, for example, someone who has autism often is a very big attention to detail person, whereas somebody who has dyslexia is amazing at seeing the big picture. So they're opposites, and they're both incredibly talented and have special skills, like special X-Men skills, but they're so different. So as you say, you can't group people like that.
Thank you. I see one last question. Oh, two more questions. John says, do you, and I expect it's talking about IASME, offer training or assistance to companies that already have neurodiverse employees and are struggling? I suppose the neurodiverse are struggling. So this is one question from John. The other point from Richard, not really a question, he says, why not use ASPE adults to train employers and help them understand what it is like to be on the spectrum? So over to you.
We don't currently offer training. We are we are a little bit overwhelmed by everything at the moment. We try and do too much, and of course the neurodiverse side of things is, we invest money in it. It doesn't make money, so we have to do it to a certain level. Whether we could make money, whether we could cover our costs with training, potentially we could. Sorry about the over the loud dogs. So yes, it is something that we look at, and moving to online, potentially we could do online training. The other thing about getting neurodiverse people to train up employers, it's finding the right, you need to find somebody that understands neurodiverse side of things and the neurotypical side of things to be able to explain things, and that's the key, I think. Finding those people is the key, and we have at least 2 of them in IASME now, and of course they want to focus on cybersecurity and exciting things like that, but I really do think they have a role in training up neurotypical people and educating employers, and that's what we use them for as well.
Thank you, Emma. I think John came back and said, actually, I meant the company is struggling with dealing with neurodiverse persons and thinking of sacking them. So he also says it's the side of the same coin. So your short answer, no, we do not have bandwidth to train companies or neurodiverse people who are already in employment. But
it's a big need. It's a big need. When I first had our first neurodiverse employee, I couldn't cope. I mean, I know about neurodiversity, and I found it so stressful, and she obviously found it really, really stressful as well. There does need to be a helpline. This is something that is urgently needed for employers and employees, because I've talked to several companies who say, you know, I employed a neurodiverse person and it was a complete disaster, and, you know, we had to sack them, and obviously it completely fell apart. You know, there are ways to get around that, but both employer and employee need support in that. So it is, you know, a massive gap. Someone needs to do that.
Thank you. I think we've reached the end of our questions online. I don't know if David or Rebecca have some more questions or closing remarks. It's almost.
I just want to say a huge thank you, Emma. That was really, really insightful. Really insightful, and I enjoyed
talking for 1 hour. That was a fantastic. Thank you, Emma. That was a fantastic insight into.
You're very welcome.
That was really great. Thank you so much, Emma. And I think the other
Absolutely.
bit,
it makes you want to do something.
Yeah,
absolutely. And also there are many advantages as well. And I think, you know, there's, you know, the kind of typical company may not realize how beneficial as a normal employee the return on investment is, because you do get phenomenal kind of return.
Yes, in fact, that's, you know, I should have made more of that. You get loyal employees. I mean, part of the problem that we found with SOC analysts was that they would train up for a few months, you know, get bored and leave. Whereas a lot of the neurodiverse trainees that we've got, you know, they want a long-term placement, they want a long-term employer, and they enjoy the SOC analyst work. So you get loyal employees, you get people who are incredibly talented. As I say, in many roles, they beat the socks off any neurotypicals. And yeah, really amazing employees, but both do need support often.
I'm pretty sure we'll be in touch again, Emma. I think there's lots of people at BCS who will want to hear from you again. Thank you ever so much, Emma. David, do you want to say a few words?
No, I think it's just
Rebecca?
great to get Emma to kind of be so frank about how it all works. It's absolutely amazing achievement to, you know, push the boundaries so far.
Thank you.
And you can listen to Rebecca on the 17th of August. She'll be one of our 3 speakers on other diversity, and we'll focus on race, gender, ethnic, and it's going to be a big event then as well. Please do sign up. The link is on the BCS Law webpage. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but big surprises and some tech solutions, surprisingly, from a tech organization. Can tech help? Thank you very much, everybody, and have a lovely evening and a great week ahead. I'll be closing now. Bye-bye.
Thank you.